Well, hello, this is Dr. Chris Lemmon, and this is the April chat for 2026. Um, and so we started out this year with playing a little bit with grounding our body, getting aware of energy. The theme so far is all about awareness, and so that will continue for the first part of this year. So the first thing we're getting aware was that energy movement through your body. You start to get that sensation. We're playing with that. By now, when you attend, you should be able to feel that. It's like, wow, can you feel that sometimes? Sometimes you just rub your hands together and start to feel that come forth in your energy, in your tips, your fingers. And so it's just a question of feeling energy flow, feeling grounded so that you're a little more solid, a little more balanced on the planet. And so that's a connection from it. Uh, Last time I threw at you one, I said it's going to be a little slower learning it, and that's paying attention to emotion and feeling when the trigger of emotion kicks in, when all of a sudden it starts. You think about something, and then all of a sudden the energy comes into play and it starts to emote you. It starts to drive you into that action. Um, we'll get back to that in a later talk, and we'll start to look at some point in time, we'll start to look at how we label those emotions because we got to label those emotions in some way, shape, or form, the way it plays out. So we actually kind of build characteristics to it. I think that we build complexity to it when we scan a brain and we look at that, different types of emotion by labels then fires in different parts of your brain. So it tells us that certain condition responses are stored in different areas. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't have a labeling system. So they make a lot of assumptions when they're scanning it because it's still new stuff. And we talked quite a bit about influence. So all of this stuff is influencing. So right now, this particular month, I'm going to talk a little bit about change. If you haven't noticed that since whenever you were born, if you look at your baby pictures, you've changed. You don't look the way you did that. And you wait maybe 4 or 5 years, you won't look the way either. We get a little bit deceived because we look in the mirror every day and we don't always notice the changes that are kind of been going on. Um, yes, at this point in life why I can notice the physical changes because of the fact that I'm 82. But I still have projects every year. And when I moved into this place years ago, I looked around at all the fix-it projects I need to do. I put them into some sequence and I said, I'm going to do one a year. Maybe sometime I'll do 2 years. I'm going to take the worst problem and fix that. It was not any really big problems, but mostly I wanted to fix some electrical stuff. I wanted rewiring the inside of the house. It was really a lot of poor workmanship. I had electrical outlets that were in the wall. I pulled the cover off and there was no box in there. It just was kind of hanging in the air. Anyway, it was just a lot of things. There's just projects, right? It's simple. It's not something where I had to tear out walls. Well, I tear out sheetrock, but not tear out walls and work on it. And I've done one project there. I finally got to a point last year. I worked on the gazebo out front and I rebuilt that. When I first moved in, it was the finish on the inside of the gazebo was starting to crack and peel apart a little bit. I brush sanded it off and made it look nice. But anyway, finally I had to replace the wood in it. So I just did last year and and so I got that done and I was sitting around the other day thinking, wow, I wonder what project's going to materialize this year. I don't see anything. I think I took care of everything I could find. And then all of a sudden, I have a fence post on the back off my deck that's starting to give way. So I had to anchor that and tie it down. Why am I telling you? I'm just telling you that if you think about your life, you've always gone through conditions of change, whether you taking care of it or you hired someone to take care of it. It doesn't make any difference, but it's always there. You can expect it's always going to be there. When I see people that have moved in and settled down and don't change anything for 4 or 5 years, when we get into their house, and I have a lot of people are friends of mine, I help them move out, and you walk around the house and you really notice them when the house is empty, how much damage was done to the flooring, how much damage to the walls. And they got like never noticed that because something was sitting there, but this is broken or that's broken. I had a friend of mine that had a couple of fish aquariums, and when we moved out, that whole part of the floor was really soggy. So one of the things that had to done is they had to actually repair the section of floor just because leaking or moisture or splashing from the fish in an aquarium. He had two of them side by side. Actually, eventually ran down, saturated on the walls and the floor, and did damage to them over a 10, 12-year period. So I was like, wow, very interesting. So change occurs. We don't notice blink rate on our television or our computer right now. If you're looking at this, there's a blink rate. So that shows up, and blinks, but cells have a blink rate. So uh, if you start to recognize, if you take anything and get it hot, the electricity, alternating current, most certainly has a blink rate, on and off, on and off, and on and off. So DC current seems to have this illusion of like it's just consistent, but the electrons have a blank rate. And so what you're really looking at is you're looking at electrons moving from place to place, but really, are they moving from place to place, or are they blinking out and blinking on? That's the argument that science is still battling with, right? Um, so it just, you recognize that it gets warm. And the longer, if you look at three-phase current pretty much is set up to, we have the cycle of current coming on so that you've got a peak going all the time. When you're looking at three-phase current, that something's hot all the time. And so those type of elements have to be geared up to handle the extra heat. We're not set up for three-phase current. We don't do well with that kind of heat. We really have a range that's a comfortable range for us, and we grow up in it, right? So I'm sure you've read already when a city like Chicago, which is usually very windy, known the windy city, it's very windy. Even when it's hot, the wind's blowing off the lake, so it's not really unbearable hot. But when they have those three-figure weekends, lots of people die. And then you have the other extreme, got places in India that's 120 degrees, 110 degrees all year round practically. And then all of a sudden it gets down to a really cold spell up 50 degrees, and people actually die because they can't take that change in temperature. They die from 50 degrees. I mean, 50 degrees, I'm running around in a t-shirt. So it's like, there's a big difference. That's called range. So there are big factors that start to affect us, and we'll talk about all those as we go forward. The theme, once again, is change. Change is going to happen. And when you start to look at a picture or an idea, that's a picture or an idea. And as soon as you take it, you're starting to change. You take one a week later, you may look the same. You take it 20 years later, you're going to look totally different. But you'll actually change every week, every minute, every shot, right? You just don't notice it. And part of the reason why we don't notice it is we calibrate an idea in, and then we impose that idea. Our brain doesn't seek out a truth. Excuse me. Our brain doesn't seek out a truth, it conserves. So it just takes best shot. And what the change in my throat. Anyway, a little coughing spell. Fortunately, you don't get them too often, but I do drink a lot of coffee, so at least I got something better to wash it down. But I've been outside on my deck, as I talked about, kind of shaking the boats around and stirring up a bunch of dust. Yeah, yep. Just before I started this talk, so I was like trying to figure out when spring comes exactly what I'm going to do. So I tied some ropes on it to hold it up until I can address the change that occurred last month when the wind was blowing and it was colder than heck and it was 30 degrees out there. Anyway, very nature of it, it's always going to be there. So we can look forward to change. We maybe get a new job we can look forward to. We have a new relationship. Maybe we look forward to it. We have new friends. We look forward to it. We appreciate the change. I've had lots and lots of things I've done. I had a lot of fun being a ski instructor for a while. I did that for a bit. Then I just moved away from that because I moved, and where I was living, I didn't have any friends around that were skiing. So I was a diver for a while. I've done a little bit of everything at some point in time, but mostly because I was in some element of camaraderie. I was around a bunch of people that were doing something. So that's what we did, right? We just kind of played with it. I ran motorcycles for a while. I ran BMX when I was younger, but I was still at 30. I was the oldest person on the track. So when those guys would fall down, they jump back up and get on their cycle and take off. And I'm just like, I'm laying on the ground saying, "Oh, I hope someone just kills me. I'm so sore." Anyway, it it just it's just the very nature of, yeah, sometimes you're into something and you stay in it all your life and you get really excited about it. But the truth is, you probably have improved and you probably specialize a little bit. So there's always an element of change. And sometimes we just simply resist all those components, resist that whole dynamic of change. I had a young man come to me. Well, he was not very young, he was 30, but that's still very young compared to me. But anyway, he came to me and he was playing video games. And he said he's been doing it ever since he was a little kid. So that was X amount of years playing video games. So he got unemployed and he was bored to death. So he ran unemployment for a while and he played video games. So we sat down, we figured out how many hours he was playing a week on video games. And he was running around 56 hours a week playing video games. That's what we clocked in. So I said, I don't know what to tell you, but you're going broke. You ran out of employment. You've taken little bit jobs that lasted for a couple of weeks and made some money to pay some bills, but you're back to the same thing again. You're running out of money. I, you're going to have to change something, and it's probably going to be the video games. I don't think you could cut back to, say, 20 hours a week and be happy with that. I don't think you could cut back to weekends. I think that you should do, my advice is stop making that payment, quit playing those games, and give yourself 3 month break. And during that 3 months, look around for a job. In 3 months' time, you have a chance of finding a job because now you're reframing yourself. It's like, I'm not thinking about when I'm going to get off work so I can play the game. I'm thinking about I'm going to get a job so I can pay the bills, so I can, you know, pay the rent, buy groceries, pay the car insurance, which lapsed on them, uh, all those things. And it was really very interesting. He didn't quite make it 3 months. He made it a little about 2.5 months. And then he came back and he said, the people I play games with is like my family. I don't ever talk to my family. Well, the truth is, I don't think the family wants to talk to him because he's always hitting them for money. But nonetheless, he said, I don't ever talk to my family. So it's like I'm missing all my friends. So I think I'm going to go back to playing games. And I'm going, uh, so what are you going to do about rent? What are you going to do? Well, maybe I can talk someone, let me move in with them. It's like, oh my goodness. Like, wow. So what I'm telling you is that change can not necessarily go in a positive direction. I'm not saying that having friends wasn't positive. I'm not saying all the above. I'm just saying as you start to see it became addictive. It's just kind of like the people that meet and have a couple of drinks once a week or every day after work or whatever. And they'll go in, have one or two drinks, and all go home. But if one of them starts drinking too much and becomes a drunk, and they have to take him home after a short period of time, they ostracize him. You only have a range within your network. I started out telling you I've gone to a lot of different things, and I did it because all of a sudden I was in the mix of a group of people that were doing it, and then I switched and I did it with them, and we did it for a while, and then they all moved. Something happened. I no longer had those connections. I still got tons of tools. I've done lots of different jobs. I had a profession I was getting into, but then jobs would show up. Someone would contact me. I would bump into someone. They had an offer. I thought, well, that's really cool. Yeah, I can remember I bumped into a guy one day. We were talking. He had a bunch of pictures that he was sorting out. He was trying to put together a folder, and I looked over his coffee shop, and that's all the pictures. I go, well, that's amazing. And he said, yeah, he said, I've got a company I put together, and we make steel garage doors. So they're not as heavy as wood garage doors, but they're not as light as aluminum. So when wind blows, they don't get floppy. They don't move around. They're stationary. And I've got it set up with huge tables. We solder, put them all together, and then we dip coat them. So they don't rust, they don't paint, they got a coating all over them. We can paint them to match the outside of the house. They'll fit in. And when you figure the labor to assemble doors and everything and build them, we come out competitive with, well, certainly competitive with wooden doors. So he says, I'm just looking for a salesman, and that's why I'm putting some material with her. So I go, wow, I was in a business and it was going nowhere. And I was making a living, uh, but I found that some of my cohorts were cheating a little bit. And and anyway, I wasn't real happy with it. And I was on the fence of whether to report them to the company or what to do. It's like, it's like they're cheating. It's actually costing me sales and I should be mad at them, but there's couple of them. It's like, wow. So I just quit that job and I wrote a long letter to the company why I quit. And I said, you got people cheating and I just don't want to be part of this ethically. So if you ever solve your problem, why give me a call. But I'm sure they'd never call me. That wouldn't be the consideration. But at least I addressed the issue and left. So I went ahead and worked for this guy, and as I'm talking to his workers, I find that he's had five or six salesmen and never sold a damn door anywhere. So it's like, wow. So can you imagine? I'm getting my head around this. Now I talked a little bit about influences. So I'm sitting this and saying, how do I go to a contractor and influence them? Because this is like such a weird idea. They're used to the way things are. It's too new, right? So I'm sitting there trying to figure out of how I'm going to do this. I'm putting my head onto this and say, I need to set this up. So I had an appointment. I got there about an hour early. I was outside in a parking lot. There was a coffee truck, breakfast truck, burritos, sandwiches, coffee that pulled up. And some of the employees came down and they were getting coffee. And I'm out there thinking, oh, wow, I'm here early trying to get my head around this. I'll get a cup of coffee. So I'm walking over to get a cup of coffee, and there's a guy coming down here, and the guy running that coffee truck knew him, said hi, Bob, or whatever his name was, and I am standing there, and he's wearing a suit. I figured he works inside. I figured maybe I got lucky, and he's the guy I'm going to talk to. So when I got my cup of coffee, he got his, and I gave it the guy and I said, "Hey, I'll buy you work here?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "I'll buy your coffee." And so I bought his coffee. And so I guess he thought he'd be nice. So he's standing there talking to me a little bit. And he said, what are you doing? And I explained to him, got an appointment with somebody in there to show him garage doors. And he kind of chuckled when I told him it was steel. And I explained a little bit. And he goes, well, that is interesting. That is really interesting. So I went inside at my appointed time. I finished my coffee. I sat down with this guy. I'm telling the story. He's already kind of giggling at me. He's like, yeah, right. We want steel garage doors. Really, come on, give me a break. And so as I'm talking to him, this guy in the suit that I met in the parking lot, he's walking by and he said to the guy sitting in front of me, hey, this guy's got some good ideas. You should listen to him. And he walked on by. I didn't know it. He was the owner of the company. I had no clue. So the person I'm talking to is looking at me saying, all right, give me this whole spiel. So I'm telling him about it. So he said, okay, prices are competitive. You guys put them up, you install them. Like, wow. And you're competitively priced. Okay, I'll give it a go. The boss wants it. We'll do it. We're most ready to do it. So I went back to my boss and I said, here it is. I got this 145 garage doors, blah, blah, blah. Some two cars, some two and one, some two cars, whatever. It's all mixed up. And they look a little different. So they want things that are going to go with the design of the house, of course. But I told them you could do it. And you told me you could do it. So I got all the prints of the designs of the house, all the prints that they have for the garage doors. I got it all right here. And it's going to be on a certain rate of delivery when they get the houses done. Then they'll be ready for a garage door and I'll contact you. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was in a state of shock. And he said, okay, well, I can't pay you your commission until we sell the garage doors and get money because I don't have any money. So I said, but I do have material. I got everything set here. I will do this. So I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, that's probably okay. And I'm thinking back, and as they're going through it and everything, I had talked back and forth with the company. And he said they figured the project would be done by the end of the year. So this was like March, and I'm thinking by the end of the year. So I might not get paid any money at all until January, February. It's like, wow, okay. So what can I say? It's like there's no way I'm going to make any money on this job. I did a good job, and I might be able to go out and influence someone and get lucky or whatever you want to call that, and have it all flow together and have make some more. I did that week actually found two more jobs, single garage doors that they could go out and make within a couple of weeks and pay me some money back. But that was pretty much it. So I'd given a guy a 30-day notice, and like I said, I sold two more garage doors, single ones that they put in beach areas where the wooden doors warp a lot because of the moisture, and the aluminum doors flap in the wind. So they love those doors. And but that was the end of it. So it's when you look at change and you delve into change, you don't always know. I didn't know. I didn't know how complicated that was going to get. I got into that mix of it, and I did that for a little while. And it was just a couple of months of my life in there. It's like that was fun. I had an interesting time. I got to delve into things I didn't know. I get to see parts of Southern California that I'd never been into, down by the beaches in the southern part, and and it was very, very interesting. I met some very interesting people, and I met some other people in other businesses that I actually later on wound up doing some work for. And I had a I had a guy that came to me. This is all about change, right? So I'm just giving you some examples on change. I had a guy. I'm in a bar actually getting a sandwich. I wasn't drinking. I was just getting a sandwich. I was working, and I was in a well-to-do La Jolla area. And I was thinking maybe I could sell some single garage doors down there before this whole thing was up. So I'm down there looking around because it's once again it's beach area, and that's where the biggest wear and tear garage doors was. And and I met this guy, and I'm talking to him, and he's kind of like sitting there like, why me, Lord? And I chat with him a little bit, and I tell him I'm in the garage door business, and he says, oh, he used to be in construction. He's retired, and he's telling me he's got a house on a hill, and it's got three levels, and he now lives there alone. He had three sons that had three bedrooms on the bottom floor, one bathroom, three bedrooms on the bottom floor. And then there was the next bedroom level for him and his wife, and a guest room. And then they had a house, which is a pretty good sized house. Very, very expensive, very big place on a hillside, beautiful view. And he's telling me that he just got weirded out because his wife had died. The kids have moved on. They're married, they have kids, they're gone on. So he never goes down to the third floor, hardly ever, because why? There's nothing down there for him. Yeah. So finally, one day, not too long ago, he went down to the third floor, and he found some debris. He said it was like wet wood. It's like something you would find from the beach. And he said there was a couple of pieces laying on the floor. And he's looking around for a leak or something where it's like, come on, it's like this is not on the surface, this is built in. He couldn't find anything. He couldn't figure out what it was. And and I said, well, that's kind of interesting. He says, I still got that stuff. I don't know who to show it to. And I said, okay, well, I'll take a look at it. I got time. I'm not doing anything. Let's go take a look at it. So we went out, jumped in his car, and he drove me up to his house, and he showed me those things. Well, when I walked into his living room, it's all nautical theme. It's all big boats and glass cages. It's like, I mean, it's total nautical theme. Anchors, everything you can imagine is all nautical. Pictures of the ocean. It's total nautical theme. And we go all the way down, and there on the floor, he laid a newspaper down. And he just transferred them onto the newspaper. He didn't know what to do with them. He thought maybe someone was trying to break in. He looked all around the house. There was no, on that bottom floor, there was no outside entrances or doors. But the bedrooms did have a side window in them. And so he checked them. They were all secured, all locked, double pane windows. Nothing was broken, nothing was loose. So it was very confusing thing for him to figure out, like, what the heck's going on? Anyway, I looked at them, and I'm looking at him, and I said, so you live here alone? He said, yeah. So you have a passion for boating. Do you have a boat? He says, oh no, I'm too old for that. I had one when I was younger. And and he said, I got married, I had a family, and I had to work, and I had to sell the boat. It just costs money. So I said, okay, so do you have dreams about nautical stuff? Do you think about nautical stuff? Yeah, I do, and I read a lot of books on nautical stuff. I said, it's great. Okay. So let's just do this for fun. Let's leave this right here, debris you see on the floor, and let's just change this. Change. So we'll make an influence. So wherever this came from, totally unknown to you, totally unknown to me. So we won't worry about it. We're just going to say, thank you for the samples of wood, but I want pieces of eight. I'd rather have pieces of eight than rotten wood. So if you're going to do something, whatever you are, I mean, I don't particularly believe in ghosts or anything, but it's like I'm trying to get this guy's head on straight. He needs a handle on this. He's in a quagmire, and no matter who he talks to, they're not going to have an answer for him. I know that. So I'm trying to get him to change, to think differently about it, to think in a positive way about it. Like, wow, what is this as an opportunity? Because he's lonely and he's trying to find a way to connect with people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come over and told me his story, right? He's reaching out. So I said, ask for piece of eight. I just thought that, wow. And I thought nothing would happen, but I thought at least he wouldn't be sitting worrying. He would think, oh, yeah, it's kind of like praying for something and feeling better. So that was the nature of my thought. And then I told him I had a friend of mine was that I went to school with that was a psychologist right in La Jolla where he lived. And the guy was a friend of mine. And if he had some emotional issues or trauma, I gave him the guy's number and stuff. I said, call him and tell him you know me and go in and tell him your story. I think it would help you so that you're not sitting there worried about it. But, you know, so anyway, I left it at that and I left. A month later, I got a phone call from this therapist, this friend of mine I went to school with. And he said, hey, you sent this guy to me, his name's such and such. And I said, yeah, he did come by. He talked to me. He said, he told me what you did. And he's laughing. He said, what the hell were you doing? I said, I just tried to get him on a positive vein. He was worried that someone was breaking in or someone was stealing something, the building was falling apart, you know. I didn't see any damage there, so I just turned it into a positive story. He said, okay. He said he had an appointment with him. He came to see me a couple times. We went to, he's a really nice guy and very bright. He had an appointment with the other week and he called and canceled the appointment. And he said, I got to sit with this for a while. And I said, yeah, okay, no problem. What happened? He said, I got a coin. Like, whoa. And so anyway, this friend of mine called me. He said, did you go put a coin in there? I said, no, no, I can't get into that place. I didn't do anything. He said, where the hell a coin come from? Hey, hey, you're the therapist. You deal with this. I'm not going to deal with it. Right? Not my bag. But, but it's like, wow. He's sitting there and I said, so he said, should I go see the coin to see if it's real? Should I tell him to bring the coin to me? Well, actually, either way, he could have implanted. You know, we'll never know. Maybe that positive thing got him somewhere in a trance state to go out and find a coin. Maybe he had one in the garage because he has all this old junk, and maybe he put it down there, and maybe you don't remember it. Maybe he did it to change his reference. Maybe it was a self-healing mode, and maybe there's, I don't know, maybe there's dead sailors in the ocean somewhere, and the ghost of them brought it to him. You could pick any story you want to, but what we're really doing is we're looking for a healing for him. So my friend goes, wow, you're right. I was going to question his sanity, but this might be something that will catapult him into like all of a sudden waking up and kind of getting back into life. You see, this is just an example of supporting a neighbor. I don't care how crazy it is. It makes no difference. It starts to get you a change going to where you start to feel that. I watch so many people be in depression and all of a sudden a voice talks to them or something comes in and boy, it just flips them around. I don't know. In my context, I think it's something in the brain and it's turning around and it's referencing. It says, hey, it's that you can do this. I'm supporting you. That piece is in there for all of us. And so when we start to talk about influences, which we just did another month back, so we can start to say, how do we make an influence? Does it have to be scientific? Does it have to be concrete? or can it be inspiring? Come on, some people see a beautiful scenery and it just changes their life. Some people hear music and it's kind of amazing what it does to them. Some people are working on a problem for months and can't solve it and go on vacation for a couple of days to just resolve the whole thing. You've all read those stories in books. That's just converting that. So this whole program is about awareness right now. And I don't want you to go out and collect coins, although that's kind of nice. But I don't simply, that's not our goal right now. I just want your goal to become aware of where you got something that's holding you back and see if you can flip that. Change the story. I don't care how true it is. Have fun with it. Make it a fun thing for you to do. Just get inspired with it and change it and see where it goes, right? Because that will make all the difference. We're trying to change our relationship. I'm telling you, change is going to happen. We're trying to change our relationship to change so we can actually see how that flows in our life. Can we make it always positive? Right? Yeah. Because sometimes the change we're looking at is medical. There's a whole genre of stories I could tell you, and I'm sure a lot you have about how some people got sick and just fell apart, and other people get sick and get well. So those the same nature of influences. And this is what we're playing with. So it's another awareness piece that you can start to play with. Will you get this one resolved by next month? Probably not. But as you pay attention to these, now you've got several things that actually go together. Being grounded, being connected to the planet, getting secure in that so you don't feel like you're flopping around. Start to take a look at what influences everything. Start to take a look at how your emotions get triggered and what's going on. And now we start to look at your relationship to change. Should be moving you forward. Yes, it's going to be aging you. Sorry about that. But it's most certainly going to be moving you forward. And so start to change that relationship with that, and you'll start to change the whole dynamic. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, send them to chris@wizardscatch.com, and I'd be glad to answer your questions. Be glad to email you. I get a lot of questions and are similar, then I put out usually a little talk or a blog to be able to handle those questions. So uh, thank you very much. And if I can find the button here, there we go. We will talk again next month.